over months and years, I could get to that place where my beliefs were aligned with just anti-racist beliefs. And yet, the thing that was disconcerting was to get to that point and say like, but I don't want to not call myself a white nationalist because that would mean losing my family, losing all these relationships. Being a person who is alone without a community it's a very scary place to be.
Hi there and welcome to I Changed My Mind, the series that normalizes what the changing mind looks like. I'm Brooke Sebold, a filmmaker, a storyteller, and a deep believer in our capacity for change. This is one of 5 episodes we're producing in partnership with PFLAG National, the largest organization in the US dedicated to supporting, educating, and advocating for LGBTQ+ people and those who love them. In these polarizing times, one thing we can all agree on is how painfully divided we are, and that division is only deepening. Nowadays, we don't just reject the other side's beliefs, we hate them for believing it. This series interrupts that cycle. It's a reminder that we're all capable of change, and today's story brings that truth to life. Adrienne Black grew up at the very heart of white nationalism. At 10, she came out publicly as a white nationalist on The Jenny Jones Show, accompanied by her father, Don Black, who founded Stormfront, the internet's largest racist community. Her godfather was David Duke, former Grand Wizard of the KKK. And Adrienne wasn't just a believer, she was the heir apparent, expected to carry the movement into the future. Everything changed when she went to college. Over weekly Shabbat dinners and friendships with Jewish students, students of color, and others who challenged her, Adrienne began to dismantle the ideology she had inherited. In 2013, she renounced white nationalism and came out as an anti-racist. In 2024, she came out again.
This time as transgender.
Today, Adrienne continues to speak out, living openly as her true self, while confronting the ideology she once represented. Her story is proof that transformation is possible, and that changing your mind can change your life. Here's Adrienne's story.
My name is Adrienne Black, and I changed my mind about who I was told to be and who I truly am.
Adrienne, thank you so much for being here with us today. I've been so looking forward to this conversation, and I thought we can kind of just start at the very beginning of what was it like growing up in your family?
Thanks for having me. It's nice to talk to you. I grew up in an urban area in South Florida. I lived in a place that was very multicultural. The sort of external world, I think, looked like a lot of people's lives. The thing that was really different was that my family was a part of the white nationalist movement internationally, running the largest online white nationalist community in the world on a server in our house. That media were coming over throughout my entire childhood and interviewing my dad, that I eventually asked, could I start giving interviews too? It was this sort of dichotomy that the world around me felt fairly normal. It was like America. And the world that I felt like I was a part of through my family almost felt like the secret, true world. There was like this veil over society that only we could see.
And I know you came out as a white nationalist on Jenny Jones in a very public way. What was it like sort of transitioning into the public face of the white nationalist movement?
Yeah, I remember that extremely clearly. I wanted to be a part of it. I was kind of precocious in my ability to articulate it, more so than most kids who grew up in white nationalism.
It's the end of the millennium. Do you know what your kid is reading on the internet? Maybe it's this, the internet's version of a hate rally.
And so what message are you sending on your website?
I'm sending a message to be proud of your history and your ancestry.
I felt like I did pretty well. Afterwards, my family sat around the TV and sort of critiqued and edited the things that I had said, like not saying here's what you have to say, but like here's the best messaging. You use the word racist. We don't use the word racist. We use racialist. Like, don't use the enemy's language. And I felt like I had cast my lot in as this public figure when I hadn't quite turned 10 yet, that I just would take on this mantle the same way as my father had. And then after that, I gave more and more interviews. I spent a decade talking about white nationalism and getting better at it. It really felt like this inevitability, and it also felt like something that I could kind of keep separate. I felt like I could live a normal life, and I think the main thing that happened over the years was it became more and more clear that that was not the case. Like, being a white nationalist leader sort of increasingly absorbed who I was and how people saw me and how all of my relationships developed as I got closer and closer to being an adult.
So then you went off to college and you chose New College, which is such a liberal university. It's very LGBTQ plus friendly, very liberal in a lot of different ways. What drew you to that specific university?
You know, I can look back now and be very authentic in saying that I really liked the aspects of queerness and artists and creativity. And I recognize also the contradiction in that, but like the story that I told my parents, the story that I told other people in white nationalism was just the straightforward one. It was the honors college, it had low in-state tuition, and that was real.
I know the first semester that you were in school, you were closeted as a white nationalist, but also calling in every morning to a radio show that you co-hosted with your dad that was a white nationalist radio show, and at the same time developing meaningful relationships with Jews, students of color. I think you even dated a Jewish person. What was it like holding both of those things at the same time?
It was horrible. It never once dawned on me how intensely torturous it was going to be to live in a community where I was building relationships, where I knew people who were telling me stories of the ways that white supremacy had hurt them, and yet I was not telling them where I came from, and I just knew that all these relationships were going to feel so betrayed when they found out what I was keeping from them, and this idea I had had that I could sort of be whole to everybody when the things that I was doing couldn't be reconciled. I think that was dawning on me immediately.
What did it feel like when that information finally came to light?
I was studying abroad the second semester, so I wasn't there when an upper year student just posted all the information about me. It became this huge discussion on the student forum, and I was not there, but I was hearing from people who were like sending me emails saying like, is this true? And then just watching those relationships implode, and then having this just discussion by a community that I knew I cared about, so I couldn't like dismiss it. That was a real way that I dealt with just sort of general criticism in the world. It was just saying like, oh, you don't get it, you don't understand me, you think I'm a monster or something. And like in this school, they didn't believe that. They had known me for months. They knew that I was, you know, like interpersonally nice. And that didn't matter because of the way that I was harming them in the world. Like that almost made it worse. I'd never had an experience like that where I knew that I cared about people who were learning the ways that I was harming them unapologetically, because I was still saying I'm a white nationalist. I was still calling into a white nationalist radio show, and yet I had people who were the victims of white supremacy who were saying like, you call yourself my friend? Like, what have you been keeping from me? And like, I had no answer to that other than saying, you know, I am legitimately your friend, and having them say like, what does that even mean?
And I know you talked about how that moment was sort of met with both compassion and also with rejection. Why don't we start with the compassion? I'd love to hear about the Shabbat dinners over at Matthew's house.
I got back to campus and people giving me the middle finger when they recognized me in the library. It was super intense. And yet Matthew knew me a bit. Like we had shared cell phone numbers because we'd been in the same class. When he invited me to the Shabbat that he hosted in his dorm, it was like, oh yeah, the guy from my class, like, you know, we used to pass each other last year. And then I showed up. We didn't talk about it that first night. We kind of acted like nothing had happened. We talked about school. And then I kept coming back knowing things were very tense, and it like unraveled from there. It became, conversations happened because of the people I met there, but it's kind of amazing how the choice and invitation of one person to do something that seemed very counterintuitive was so influential on my life. I still don't quite know what to do with it other than to just kind of remember that individual choices make huge differences.
Because it was at those dinners that you met Allison, is that right?
She was his roommate, and I was meeting her for the first time. She was very standoffish and offended that I was in her dorm, and she was angry at Matthew for inviting me. And she kept that up for a while before she decided that I was gonna be there and she was not going to just not be coming to these roommate dinners that she really had enjoyed before that point. And so she decided to sit down one day and she still wasn't talking to me. She like made a point of talking to everybody else except me. But then the fact that She looked at that situation and realized that nobody else there was sort of directly confronting me. They were sort of thinking that the fact that I was coming to Shabbat dinner was confrontation itself, and she realized because she was not Jewish, because she was white, if she was going to do something, it was going to be the person to say, like, could you explain to me how you reconcile believing in white nationalism, advocating for it publicly, and just showing up and being friends with people who, your family would hate that you were friends with? Could you answer that question? And so we started those conversations, and that felt like another unique individual choice that I do not know that I could have made, and I don't think most people would have.
Yeah, I was so struck by that relationship, and also just by her approach, and also by your receptivity to it, because I think it's a specific person who is going to be sort of open to new information and wanting to know if there's any flaws in your own logic.
I wanted to be somebody who, if I believed something that was just wrong, that I didn't want to continue believing something that was wrong. Talking to Allison, I could sort of explain, here are the facts that I think I have, and she was actually really encouraged by the fact that I believed things because I thought I had facts, because the facts that hold together white supremacy fall apart if you want to look at them. It's one of the most well-researched things, the fact that race is just a social thing. And so she felt like she didn't have all the arguments ready, but she could read stuff, she could have those discussions, and she felt confident that she would win if we were really talking about, where's the better evidence. And I'm open to it because this is a trusting conversation. I was realizing that I had only ever talked to people who either believed white nationalism or were journalists who were asking about white nationalism. I had never talked to somebody who was just a friend. Talking to her gave me space to kind of begin the conversations of where is the misunderstanding, where is the sense that I genuinely do not want to be harming any of the people I know here, or even the people out in the wider world, and yet my story about why I'm not doing that seems to be not holding up. And she was the person who could sort of stand there and hear me, and then also explain why, no, it is wrong. There isn't a misunderstanding or a contradiction. It's just you have to make a choice about who you care about and who you stand behind and what you stand for. And they were really conversations about that.
Yeah, and I'm hearing that there was just a real commitment to stay in that conversation with you, but also that there was space to let you process and then return to that conversation.
It was a long time to be really committed to working through something before I got to a place where I, could accept and recognize that it's not just the facts are wrong, it's that I'm on the wrong side of care and love and the things that I say that are my values, and having to act on that. But that is a couple of year window, spending weeks and months sort of acclimating, thinking, pondering, kind of coming back a few weeks later and saying you remember that conversation we had? Where are you at on that now? That was how I think persuasion looks when it's going well.
There's multiple reactions. There's sort of the compassionate reaction, and then there was also the rejection. Can you talk about the role that each of those played?
Both condemnation and also caring and close intimacy are absolutely necessary. I don't think it's possible to really change your view of the world without both of them at play. When you really change your beliefs, it is because you're now a part of a community that is challenging the beliefs that you once held. And when that changes, when you shift, when you add new people to the community, when you move, it really naturally causes you to need to reconcile some of the beliefs, some of the things that you just took for granted, assumed. And I really don't think that we can even talk about persuasion ever without talking about this sort of shift in community and shift in who you care about, and trying to align your values with the people that you didn't consider yourself close to before. And it's not just people who like you. I think somebody hating you is the greatest evidence you have that that person considers you a part of their community.
Is there a moment when you kind of recognized, I've strayed too far from the white nationalist beliefs to really sort of categorize myself as a white nationalist?
It's an interesting question. Initially, I had felt like I was, removing one problematic argument from my, argument toolbox one at a time, and that didn't change my worldview. You always should be getting better arguments for the things you believe. But over months and years, that led to a place where it was like the foundations of this ideology are not only just like factually incorrect, but they're like just hateful. And I could get to that place where, fundamentally, my beliefs were aligned with just anti-racist beliefs. And yet, the thing that was disconcerting was to get to that point and say like, but I don't want to not call myself a white nationalist, because that would mean my family would draw this line where all the adults I had known growing up, or all the other kids who had grown up in this movement, I would lose all those relationships. And saying I wasn't that was saying I no longer wanted to be a part of them or their community or their space. Right up until the moment when I was like, well, to be a person who's aligned in the world with what I believe, then I have to declare I'm not a white nationalist. And all the consequences of that was losing my family, losing all these relationships, losing really my sense of who I was in relation to others, and that it was a choice that in some ways wasn't hard because it was clear, but it was incredibly hard just because it felt like, I don't know, I sort of relate it to like almost like dying or something. It was this feeling of like, I don't know how I exist or what I am anymore. It's almost like being a ghost or something, and being a person who is alone without a community it's a very scary place to be.
I mean, the stakes couldn't have been higher, because by sort of declaring that you were no longer a white nationalist, you lost your community and your family. What do you feel like you gained?
I gained the consistency within myself. I say that I care about people and I act on that belief.
So you officially came out as an anti-racist in 2013. What did it feel like to go public with this new identity?
I just kind of felt like a shade walking through the void or something. I didn't want to talk publicly ever again. I got angry, hateful messages from my siblings and from random people throughout white nationalism. I would wake up in the morning to a bunch of like random messages for months and years.
So in 2013 you came out as anti-racist, and then in 2024 you came out as trans. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Like, I'd always had whatever the internal sense of what, gender identity didn't align with what I was told I needed to be. I talked about wanting to be a girl as a little kid. At least my dad had to give me this thing about it's fine to have whatever thoughts, but just never act on them. And I was like, oh. And I sort of internalized that and lived it for a long, long time. And I think what New College really changed was that I could sort of live in a space that was so explicitly trying to make room for queer identity. So I could see people all around me look into themselves and know that they could find whatever was there and express it. And I did not feel like I could do that because I was in this very intense situation of having to explain myself and my ideology and my public writing and speaking. And then I walked away from my family and my life and definitely did not feel like, oh, now is a safe time to sort of explore. I had to get to a place where I felt secure enough in the world and the relationships I had built before I even felt like I could start doing what I had seen people at New College do. It took actually accepting that it was something I wanted to do in the world, that I could be, that I believed was possible. It was years before I feel like I even began kind of a process of embodying myself.
Obviously, you've changed your mind and changed your worldview in so many different ways. What is the capacity that you see for others to be able to change their minds?
Just about anybody at any time can change the things that they believe are true. I don't actually think that that's incredibly hard. It's a process, it takes time, but we don't really hold our beliefs as tightly as we kind of act like we do. I think sometimes when we're saying beliefs, what we really mean is something closer to our values, and our values kind of stay a lot more consistent. And I think that when we talk about people really changing their mind, we're really talking about being more aligned with what those values are. It is very possible, and I think all of us have a lot of beliefs that probably don't actually align with the view of ourselves that we want to see reflected. And I think our ability to sit with it and be brave and change it is kind of infinite. We can all do it at any time, and the reason we don't is because the costs are real. Changing your beliefs is not hard because it's hard to learn new facts. Like, changing your beliefs is hard because it can mean that you lose all the fundamental relationships in your life.
Can you talk about what your values were as a white nationalist and how they've sort of carried over into this other version of you in a consistent way?
The thing that motivated me most to be a spokesperson for white nationalism was that I was growing up in a community of adults who were so afraid. They were terrified of the idea of losing who they were, losing their home, losing their space, being disrespected, like whatever it was. My motivation was like, I don't want these adults in my life to feel so terrified. They were people I cared about, they were people I loved, and I felt like I could do something, and that was a value that made my life feel like I was being torn apart when I was like later in a context where I had to face the fact that I deeply cared about a lot of people, and made me realize that I like had to make a choice. But the sense of the people in my life are the people who I'm going to try to change the world to make them feel safer was something that did feel consistent, and it was like who my sense of myself was that changed.
I guess I'm just so struck by sort of like the gentleness of your approach and your overall kindness, which I think is also what maybe students at New College were experiencing, and where that cognitive dissonance was when they learned about this harmful ideology that you were perpetuating. I imagine you identified as a kind person in that iteration of yourself as well, and how those two things meet in terms of the harm that those ideas really were causing.
I mean, the thing that I learned when I was coming back to school and had been outed as being a public white nationalist while being friends with people who were the victims of white nationalism, like they were disconcerted by it, by the fact that I was, friendly and nice and did favors and did not seem to be hateful or angry at them. And it was really disconcerting to me to realize that like being kind to the people in your life I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. Like, I think it matters how you are interpersonally, but that's not what decides who you are. Being interpersonally kind is not enough. You have to actually answer, who am I in the world? What's the effect of the things I do? And be able to sort of explain myself. I needed to be able to look into other people's eyes and see back the person I thought I was.
As someone who's changed so much and evolved so much in your lifetime, what do you think is the value of someone changing their mind?
One of the reasons that I think we're talking is because the nature of the things I changed are so extreme that it's like, the lessons from them work for all the smaller things in our life. But I think, day to day, I kind of hope for myself and everybody I love that we can all have these experiences of changing our minds about little things all the time, because I think it's one of the most delightful things in life when it's not something that is, going to alter your whole sense of yourself, but is going to just lead you to realizing that the world is wider and more mysterious and more unexpected and more interesting. And I kind of hope that for everybody, that we can all have those kinds of experiences, big and small, throughout our lives.
What advice would you have for someone who is stuck in beliefs that aren't necessarily true to their own values in this moment?
I think the question is about asking yourself, like, why? And I think the answer is almost always, who is the community that you feel beholden to? It's not worth it to live a life where you never really get to express the fullness of who you are. It is very worth it, even if you lose that sense of safety and community, to find yourself.